So welcome everybody. I come to you from actually Madison, Wisconsin, which is my home. Though I work in DC, but I've not been in DC since March 12th. And the embargo in DC right now is about June 1st. So my car and my apartment is very quiet in Arlington or in Alexandria, Virginia. And the staff has actually been embargoed, the entire NAR staff, for about 4 weeks. So we're actually operating both the Chicago and the DC offices remotely, and have been now for a week. We have, let me just give you a little background, and then I'll just get into a presentation. As PJ said, as the Chief Advocacy Officer of NAR, I oversee basically the Washington office. So Shannon McGann, the new lobbyist, reports to me. The policy team reports to me. All of the Realtor Party programming reports to me. And I've been doing this now for about 3 years. Bob Goldberg, the new CEO, when he came in, he asked me to go to DC and reorganize the office. And there's probably about 30 people that are not there that were there when I started in January of 18. It's a completely new operation and completely a changed operation from what we had in the past. So you've asked me today to talk a little about, the PAC, politics, and sort of how it all connects. And I had an opportunity to visit with Margie, your CEO of the Florida Association. We work very closely with them. We work very closely with Danielle and all of the GAD community in Florida. So I wanted to sort of go back and just give you a little flavor of what we do and why we do the things that we do for the PAC money that you give us. I can tell you right now that last year, and I want to work a little about 2019. Your state, it's really interesting. If I pick two topics from last year that probably justifies the commitment to RPAC in your world, the first would be flood insurance extension, and the second would be the FHA condo rules that sat dormant for 8 years, and we finally got that operational last year. I would probably say that on flood insurance for your state, which is probably one of the leading needs of the world, it's probably our #1 policy issue, and probably the most frustrating policy issue, because all we can get you is oftentimes 6 months, a year, or 2 years of extension. But I can also tell you that if NAR was not there, that program would not be extended. And I'm going to be very selfish with you. I've been doing this for 45 years, and I know the difference between, I believe, storytelling and reality. And if it was not for the National Association of Realtors, which is you, local and state, and us, that flood insurance program wouldn't be there. There are a lot of people that want to basically privatize that program, get rid of the program, and without your help and support every year. And in fact, one of the most important stories I can tell you, if you ask yourself about why the program exists and how your dollars help, is that a year ago at Christmas time, that program was shutting down. You remember the government was shutting down. And I can tell you, because of the quality of the staff that you have in DC, particularly the contacts, we spent one 24-hour period on the phone working the angles all the way up to the President of the United States to get that program reopened. In fact, we got that program reopened while all of government was shut down, simply because they knew how important it was for the livelihood of your business. The same with the condo rules. I can tell you that it was very frustrating for us to see those rules sit for 8 years, but we worked very closely with the Florida Association and your MLSs, and they gave us really powerful data to be able to go back into the agencies and show exactly what we were able to do. So if I look at the Veterans Home Loan Zero Down Program, we covered that. GSE reform, we are the lead group in making sure that Freddie and Fannie are functional. And then we'll get into this year and talk a little about that. The Opportunity Zone program is another program that we helped write into legislation, which has worked very, very well in some of our metro areas. The Terrorism Risk Insurance extension for 7 years was another program that we passed last year, making sure that we protect our real estate in our country. basically, the other areas that I think are important for you to understand are really the tax components of what we do. And so a lot of the work that we do at the federal level is actually dealing more with agencies than we do actually with the Congress. And so oftentimes the Congress will pass a law and we'll actually spend more time dealing with the agency's implementation of it. So a quick example of how that works in these very unprecedented times, the 1031 exchange extension and the opportunity zone extension number of days, 120 days, basically was pushed by us. We wrote the letter in March. We wrote the convincing letter. We got the Treasury Secretary to extend it. And that to me is many ways that we're very effective in doing that. And the challenge for us, and I want to move more into this year than last year and where we are right now. The challenge for us oftentimes is, and having worked at a state association for 35 years, is that the closer you get to the ground, the more challenging it is to try to explain what's going on. And I'll give you a good example. Right now, and let me just wander here a bit, and I have questions I think are going to be probably more valuable for you. Right now, we are struggling with the PAYPAC protection program, PPP program. It's going to run out of funds at 5 o'clock today. So all $350 billion will be exhausted. Tomorrow, the Congress, in fact, right now, Mnuchin and Pelosi and McConnell are all negotiating what we call 3.5. 3.5 is going to be probably another $250 billion of money. I don't believe there'll be an outage, but there'll also be some other things thrown in that the Democrats want, some different types of small business lending components for community banks, et cetera. But the frustration that I have for you is that when you're there where you are on the ground, you're doing a deal. And you go to a lender and a lender says you can't do this or you can't do that. It's oftentimes because the lender doesn't keep up with what the rules are. And so one of the frustrations we're having right now, we're meeting with ABA tomorrow, is if you're basically a real estate company and you're going to get an SBA loan, there's a certain qualification that you have to have, and some of the lenders have not kept up with the rule. So we have our members being rejected because they're saying you're not eligible under this particular rule. Well, the rule's antiquated. It was changed like last week. So trying to keep you up to speed as to how that all works is one of the biggest challenges we have. So let me transition into what I think is the real reason why NAR exists and what we've done and why you're so powerful at who you are. We literally went into this whole pandemic mess going on the Hill and the CARES Act, and Shannon McGann, I hired Shannon about a year and a half ago. She's so well invested on what goes on in the Hill. She was chief of staff of the Financial Services Committee, most powerful committee on the House side. And when we went in there to negotiate, what are we going to do for you, independent contractors, sole proprietors, whatever, you weren't even on the list. It was basically all about employees of an employer and all of that stuff that you get with, unemployment comp, whatever. We went in there and we explained what percent of the economy, what percent of the real estate, which is about 17% of the gross national product, what you do for your business, for local economies. And it took about a day, but eventually what we wound up doing was getting in all of these programs, the emergency program, PPP program, pandemic unemployment program, getting you qualified as independent contractors, sole proprietors for the first time ever in 45 years that I've been ever doing this. So I think about it all the time, and I was talking to one of your counterparts down there on the other side of the state, Kathy Watley, who's an NAR past president. And she said, Bill, in all my years, I never would, and she was applying for a PPP loan. She said, in all my years, I never expected as a realtor or owner of a company or an agent to be able to receive these benefits that you typically would get as an employee. In fact, actually, what's interesting today is we were part of a major coalition. If you owed taxes today, guess what? You don't have to pay until July 15th. We were part of a large business. Today's tax day, by the way, but it's not tax day. It's July, and it's not like you write the check on the 15th and get an extension. You don't write the check until July 15th. So we were part of the Recovery Act program, the $1,200 check that hopefully if you qualify for, you'll be getting. $500 extra for a child. The recovery program was one part of, we were part of a large business coalition to get that there, assuming you meet the income levels. The sick leave and some of the other family care issues were important. So really, I'll explain to you sort of how it's worked. The very first bill that was passed was more dealing with healthcare. The second one, phase 2, was all about family leave, which applies to many of you, even in your position that you are under the tax code. The third one, which is called the CARES Act, that had to do basically with a series of payroll protection programs. I don't know, I haven't checked with Margie to see if your unemployment system is in place now where you would be eligible for a what's called pandemic unemployment insurance. First time independent contractors have ever been involved with that particular program. So the bottom line for us is that what we've done probably the most, and I'm probably the most proud of what the team has done, is build up these programs for you to be able to survive in these very, very, very challenging times. And I got to tell you that real estate is a really, really critical component. And I think what we've done the best, through you, by the way, not us, but the staff, is we've convinced, I think, policymakers at both the state level, I mean, you passed your notary bill last year, at the state level and at the federal level, to realize that if you don't have a vibrant real estate market, you don't have a moving market, it really hurts the economy. And so I can just tell you that we're there every day. Even though we're in a lockdown situation, we're there lobbying for you on a daily basis. We're going to now go in, and let me just transition a second. Even though we think it's years away, there is an election this year in November, and your RPAC dollars, we will spend this year, when you add up all the hard and soft dollars, probably $50 million in all of our election activities. We will do, there's 435 seats up in Congress. There's half the Senate up. There's your legislature in Tallahassee that's up. We are an extremely active. We are the largest business PAC in the United States of America. Just telling you that we are the largest and probably the most powerful PAC. And one of the reasons we are is because we're the 1.4 million members. Now, I get the fact that not all of them play, but the reality of it is that vote, act, invest is really a critical component of the Realtor Party. And so we're a bipartisan group, which is very good. That's why our color is purple. Yes, we give to R's. Yes, we give to D's. But the reality of it is that we do a very effective job of making the decisions. I know that Margie and her team in Tallahassee does the same thing, and also Danielle in our locals. One of the things of what's great about our Realtor Party program is that we get involved in issues, we get involved in candidates at all three levels. And I'll tell you guys, no one does it as good as we do it. Nobody does. Sometimes you complain about the three-way agreement. Oh my God, the dues and all the other stuff. I'm telling you, for politics, guys, it's the best thing ever because nobody has the reach that we have. So I think that it's challenging times. I get that, and it's a really tough time. But the reality of it is, we're going to come out of this. We're going to come out of it strong. It's going to be an election, and we're going to move into into 21 just as good as we are. So, and by the way, we're doing the entire mid-year meeting virtual, and we just went through it this morning as a staff. So if you're on an NAR committee, it literally starts the week of the 27th of April. In fact, I think the post just went up today of all the meetings, and we literally will run all of our meetings from April 27th, the week of May 3rd, and then the big week is the week of May 11th. So the 12th, 13th, 14th are the big sessions. They're going to be the policy forum, 360, and then the board of directors meeting is actually going to be a virtual meeting on May 15th, Friday, for a 2-hour board of directors meeting. So I'm thrilled to be with you. I'd love to take your questions. And I think having that conversation is probably more valuable for me to be able to listen to you, who are boots on the ground, to tell me what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. So I'm gonna sort of slow down, VJ, slow down a bit, and then let you guys open it up for some questions. We can have some good dialogue.
Many programs provide relief for occupants of rental property. Other than mortgage deferments, is there any plans to help landlords who are not receiving rents?
At the moment, the forbearance is basically on properties that have government-owned mortgages. It unfortunately is not leaning the direction that the questioner probably wants. If anything, it's probably going in the opposite direction. And so we've tried to build a balance in there. So if you're going to give the renter forbearance, you give the owner forbearance, but it's being explored, but it's extremely expensive. So at the moment, I don't have any more answers on that, but it may be coming in phase 4.
Okay. It was sort of one of my questions, Bill. We hear rumors about a fourth package. You talked a little bit in the beginning of your presentation about a 3.5 package. Could you maybe go into a little bit of what you're hearing with that 3.5 and fourth package that we might see?
Sure, great question. 3.5 is my guess going to be passed tomorrow and Friday. The money runs out, and it primarily will be not as much new innovation, but extension of existing programming with dollars. So the PPP program and the PUA program and the ones that were passed basically in the CARES Act will probably be refunded. There may be some little twists and turns, but probably not a lot. And then the next one that's coming down the road may have more innovation, and what they're talking about is more infrastructure spending, because the National Highway Bill expires in September. And with interest rates being so low, there's a strong desire to be able to do infrastructure funding. You got to remember, now that we have our 2 candidates for president, one to be nominated, the other the incumbent, in normal times, everything pretty much shuts down between now and the general election. There's just not a lot of spirit of cooperation. We're in a really unusual time in the sense that the politicians, the electeds, know that in a crisis you have to support the president. But it's an unusual time because both sides of the aisle don't want the other side to win, but they got to do it subtly, because if they're really bad about it, the public will throw them all out, no matter who they are. But there's still a lot of challenges there in a presidential election year that's 270 days away.
Okay, we have.
Thank goodness we don't do the presidential election.
Yes. We have a question about this V-shaped economy that we've been hearing so much, or, going into a deep recession and then bouncing back from pent-up demand. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what you're hearing from that standpoint and how that might relate to the real estate profession?
Yeah, Lawrence Yun does, if you follow him on, he gives a very good presentation, and he's a very strong believer, probably not of the V, more of a U, little flattening, and then a slower curve. The difference, and I'm certainly not the economist, and he is, but the difference between this and 2008 is that we don't have the same liquidity issue. We don't have the same foreclosure issue. We went from, the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years to potentially spiking at 25 to 30% and then coming back down again. I think the question to that is really going to be, and if you talk to, if you talk to anybody in DC, everybody, they don't say it publicly, but everybody realizes that this isn't going away until you get a vaccine. And a vaccine is 11 months away right now, could be sooner. So what you're going to see, and we're starting to see it already because people have asked, is you're going to see regional economies. So you read yesterday that the 7 states in the Northeast are all working together. You read yesterday that Oregon, Washington, and California are working together. So rather than the debate that you see in the paper of I'm the president and I'll determine when it's going to start, and the governor's sort of saying you can go jump in the lake, Trump, I'll decide my own state. In a way, it's going to be regional in nature. There's not a question. I mean, Wisconsin, where I'm at right now, is peaking right about now. Washington, D.C. is going to peak June 1st. Seattle has slowed down dramatically. So as you look at the country, I think it'll be more regional in nature. So let me talk about real estate for a second. There is a lot of real estate being done right now, folks. I'm telling you this right now. And I've been doing this for a long, long time. And you're getting a lot. You are getting listings, and you're getting commitments. Where the system's breaking down is basically on the appraisal side, the home inspection side, the title side. You can't get all of the transactional things done. And you're very lucky because you passed an electronic signature law in Florida, thanks to RPAC. Well, there's 27 states that don't have that. 23 do, 27 don't. We are working, by the way, on phase 4 on what's called the RON Act, Registered Notary Act. The problem is you can do pretty much all the transaction except the promissory note. The promissory note has to be a wet signature. And a lot of that has to do with Freddie and Fannie. So that's one of the things we're going to talk to the lenders about tomorrow. We have our meeting with the mortgage bankers and the builders, is basically some of the frustrations that we have in the transactional side. I think personally, and I won't be around that much longer, but the reality of it is that this transformation is going to change our business the way we do it. I'm telling you right now that the motivation of doing electronic activities, we've been forced to learn how to do it. It's like the joke in my office right now is the biggest struggle we had was remote work. And you know, how many days do you give remote work? The staff was all laughing this today on our all staff call saying, first day I have remote work, I'm coming to work. I'm so sick of being at home. So the point being is that we are functioning as a society remotely. Now, I understand real estate is different than a librarian or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever like that, and we're a people business. I get that, but it's truly amazing how much transaction is taking place. So Danielle, I think the question of the recovery, and if you talk to the economists, it's not a monetary issue. It's an emotional human issue. So I'm going to look at you guys all face to face and ask you, as your state winds down and your governor comes out and says it's, you know, okay, how many of you are going to be going to a ball game with 50,000 people in the next 3 months, even though it's sort of like okay? People are going to be very head. Or how many are going to go out to a restaurant and sit 4 feet from somebody at a table? See, you were going to go, but a lot of other people won't go. And until there's a comfort level, you cannot predict what the economy do. But the bottom line is this is not 07, 08. Very different. It's a pandemic. It was quick, but I don't think it's going to be dramatically quick either to come out of it. I think it's time. In fact, we just heard today that the mayor of New Orleans has basically said no large gathering or festivals till 2021. Well, guess where our convention is in November? New Orleans. So how many of you are going to go to New Orleans in November? You're all good realtors. It's only the second hot spot in the entire country for the virus. So again, it's a psychological thing I think people have. It's just when they decide to feel that they're safe, they'll start to spend money and they'll start to spend another way. And I can tell you that the other thing that's changed is the whole retail chain, the supply chain. And that is that people that never had groceries delivered to their house may continue to do that. So a lot of things, we're going to come out of this strong, and we're going to come out of it really good. And the good thing that, as Lawrence says, we've got low rates. And the other difference is when we come out of this, which isn't going to be that much longer, we're not going to sit with a glut of inventory. Inventory is still going to be tight. Interest rates are going to be low. And what he's showing us, which is really interesting, is that the buyers still have an intense interest to do it. They're just simply saying, I'm temporarily inconvenienced, but my passion is still there to buy a house. So I think that's a really good sign, and he feels very, very bullish about it.
Okay. We have 2 more questions, Bill. So the inclusion of realtors and independent contractors in SBA loans and PPPs is a big win. Does NAR have a virtual or electronic campaign on how important their RPAC investment was with this win by our NAR legislative team in DC?
Not yet. We will, but not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
And then the last question we have is, what can we do to help you help us?
You know, thank you for that. I think if you can be, as hard as it is, if you can be vigilant and realize how important this upcoming election is going to be, this election is going to be a huge cultural election. It sets the tone for where the country's going to go. And I'm not talking just at the presidential level. I think it's at all different levels. And it's important because it also determines, even though the census has been delayed, it determines the boundaries for all the legislative districts for the next 10 years. So I think the best thing you can do for, I think, our organization, not for me, is obviously vote, obviously act when we ask you to, participate in government. And if you can give to the PAC, in times of pain, meaning if it's $15 or $1,000, I can get that. But if you can vote, act, and invest, and feel confident that there's a reward to that, I guess that's probably the best thing I could ask you to do.
Thank you for that, Bill. Those are all the questions that I have, so I'll pass it back to PJ to close it up.
Thank you, Bill. I think we're going to say goodbye, and very good information. And it's okay that we share this interview with our other major investors and others, correct?
I thank you for having me, and I wish all of you the best of luck. I hope in all my heart to be able to see you personally and be able to shake your hand with not having to worry about it or give you a hug. So thank you again for all of your time and your dedication and what you do. I appreciate that. Thank you.